had one question too for Dez. It was in the comments here talking about JJ McCarthy being the X factor. How much, I think Josh Gaddis has really surprisingly done a phenomenal job with Cade McNamara and JJ McCarthy. Obviously, he won Coordinator of the Year, the Royals Award, for a reason. He's done a fantastic job with the offense as a whole, but not often do you play two quarterbacks to the extent that they do, and it works as well as they have. Both quarterbacks have truly made a good impact on this offense. How much do you see JJ playing in this game, or even just making an impact at all?
Yeah, I think if I had to call it, I'd say JJ's probably going to have about 10 snaps in this game. When you think about the two quarterback system, I think the easiest one to go back to is the Tim Tebow and Chris Leak situation at Florida. And the interesting part is these two guys, I would say, are much closer in athleticism than those two were. Like Chris Leak was a prototypical
Yeah.
pocket passer, and we all know what Tim Tebow was. I mean, 20 touchdown passes, 20 rushing touchdowns. So it was, really, I mean, he was essentially a running back who could throw the ball. And these guys, with Cade and JJ, for me and in my thought, they're not that different athletically. Like, yes, JJ's definitely has more athleticism, more juice, but it's not as if Cade is Peyton Manning, back there. He can move, right? Like, so it's unique, and I say that to give Josh Gaddis more credit because number one, I was someone who was also critical of him last year. I thought he did not do a great job of just this offense. It just was disjointed. So to come in and have both of these guys playing well, it's a credit to him. I think that award that he won it was more than deserving. And I would say that probably the next best guy to get that award probably is still on the Michigan staff with Mike McDonald. I mean, he did a terrific job as far as taking over for the defense. But yeah, if I had to call it, I would say JJ's probably going to have like 10 snaps in this game. Probably going to be more in the red zone, where he's been just really dangerous. I think that, having that option of having him, kind of the run pass option out on the bootlegs and, kind of rolling out of the pocket. We saw him again, against Michigan State with the throw to Andrew Anthony. We've seen him do those types of things, but I think it's probably going to be around 10. For me, I've been a big I've wanted it to be more so of if JJ's going to come in, have him come in for a drive. And I
I agree with that.
basically all of the things that I've recommended for the offense have been wrong. So I'll say that that has been my thought process is, hey, if we're going to bring JJ in, have Cade go, 2 or 3 drives and then bring JJ in for a drive
Let
versus
him get in a
having
rhythm.
exactly having Cade come in for 2 plays, JJ come in for one, or had Cade for first down, JJ for second down, and then we're in third and long and we got to throw it. So let's bring Cade back in. Like I think it could be done better, but I mean it's been effective. So like I said, that I'll take the loss on that too. But that would be my thought as far as the JJ dynamic and how that'll play out. Next
Yeah.
week in the game.
Well, it's interesting too because you mentioned the red zone there, and I think the red zone is going to be one of the most important parts of this game for both teams. The reason why Michigan won 90% of its games down the stretch was because they were able to get 7 points in the red zone. They weren't doing that in the beginning of the year, and thankfully at that time they weren't playing good teams, so they didn't have to. They were able to kick field goals and still win games. But if Michigan can't get in the end zone, it's gonna be a struggle for them. And I think, I want to hear from Lou too on his thoughts about Georgia trying to get into the end zone as well, because I think both teams are kind of in the same boat there with, hey, if you're gonna ground and pound, are you actually gonna, on 3rd and 7 when you're on the 18-yard line? What are you going to do? Are you going to throw it, or are you going to try and run it and hopefully get that 7 or settle for a field goal?
Well, I think Kirby's pretty conservative. So
We
I
already
mean,
know the answer.
3rd and 8, I would almost rather. I used to get mad when teams would run the ball on 3rd and 8, give up play or something, or 3rd and 11, and you see them they run a draw. I used to get so mad. Now with Stetson Bennett, if it's like 3rd and 8 or longer, I'm like, okay, maybe if we run the ball, we'll get it. If not, we punt, play good defense, or if we're in field goal range, I'll take the 3. I don't like Stetson Bennett throwing the ball when he has to. And you can cherry pick stats on anything you want. His 3rd down numbers are horrendous. Horrendous. They're terrible. Whatever you want to look at, efficiency, completion percent, whatever. His 3rd down numbers are horrible.
Well, that'll be very interesting then, because the one, or that's another factor, that Michigan's defense has been really good at getting off the field for the most part. The only time they struggled this year was against Michigan State, when they couldn't get off the field on 3rd and 4th down. Michigan State converted like 4 4th downs in a row on one drive, and that was one of the daggers for Michigan. So it's really interesting, because there's a lot of strengths on strengths, but there's also some weaknesses and strengths in this game. And it's just going to be, I agree with what you said, Lou, in the beginning. The whole 30-day, mind games and all that stuff is going to be really, really interesting to see who comes up with what game plan for this one.
So when it comes to the players on these two teams, I think you go to Michigan, you go to Georgia because you're a top shelf player to win championships, to prepare yourself for the NFL, all that. But if you look at what's been achieved by these coaching staffs, Jim Harbaugh slayed the dragon, beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten. Nobody thought he was going to do that this year. People were talking 7-5, whatever, and Ohio State can't be beaten, but he did it. Georgia's been sitting, Lou, as a top 4 program in the country with Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson for like 5 years now, got to the championship game, lost in excruciating fashion. I don't need to remind you. So is Harbaugh playing with house money, or does he even look at it that way, versus Kirby Smart thinking, not necessarily processing it this way, like I got to call games to win a national championship because people expect that, but no, not being a dumb guy, he knows what the expectations are. We are supposed to win the national championship, versus Michigan not just being happy to be here. They're high-level players and coaches, but they're just being a different expectation level here.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much that affects the coaches or the players. I definitely think fans look at it that way, and not even fans of Georgia or Michigan, just college football fans in general. I think the more embarrassing outcome would be for Georgia to lose than for Michigan to lose. If Michigan loses, Jim Harbaugh still made the playoffs, first time Michigan's done that, still won the division, first time Harbaugh's done that, beat Ohio State, first time Harbaugh's done that, won the Big Ten. You said it. Harbaugh got a lot of those monkeys off his back. Kirby did not. Kirby lost the SEC title game for the 3rd time in 4 years or whatever it is now. Didn't beat, lost to Alabama again. Blew a lead to Alabama again. 4 straight losses to Alabama, 4 leads Georgia had in those games. At least we weren't winning at halftime this time, only after the first quarter. So I think fans will look at it that way. Like, I think if Georgia loses, the internet will be harder on that than if Michigan loses.
Yep.
Definitely agree there. I think that after Jim Harbaugh beat Ohio State and then won the Big Ten, this is all gravy from a fan's perspective, from the media's perspective. I think as long as they don't go out and get blanked or something like that, then it's going to be, wow, look at what Jim Harbaugh did, with this team, the turnaround. That's going to be still the narrative for sure. I wonder, I agree with you, Lou. I highly doubt that a lot of people are thinking of it that way, but there's always something in the back of people's minds thinking, can we really do this? If you're Georgia and you're like, I wonder what's their mentality after that Alabama game. Is it like, dang, we really just can't get over this hump? Or is it like, we're pissed off as much as possible. We got to go. We want Bama one more time, type of thing. And then for Michigan, is it like, we're here, we're not stopping now? I mean, it took us 20 years to get to this spot. Let's go get it. I think it's
that and Michigan, I think, has been the best team in America for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Alabama struggled down the stretch until the SEC championship game, but Georgia blew it in the SEC championship game. Cincinnati sleptwalked through the majority of its season. Michigan had its toughest games in November, won them, beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten, all that. I think Michigan's the hottest team heading into the playoffs. They've been the best consistently good team from November to now.
Most Michigan fans wish we played the week after the Big Ten championship, right?
Right.
It's like, let's keep this thing rolling. Georgia's down. They all that stuff. I feel like there's almost been this lull, and people are. I'm certainly concerned. Can Michigan pick up that momentum again? It's like with how hot they were. Obviously they peaked at the right time at the end of the year, but then it's 30 days. It feels like an eternity, until you get back on that field. Whereas if they were to play the next week, it's like, just keep it rolling.
Yeah. And without getting into a 20-minute playoff expansion thing, unless you want to, it sure would be great to see. I don't know who's ranked 12th in the final poll, Mark, and who was ranked 5th.
I think
it sure would be great to see that game today.
Was it MSU?
We'd have Michigan State, Notre Dame.
Yeah, so no offense,
nice little matchup.
State Golden Flashes. That was great that they played today, but it would have been nice to have Michigan State versus Notre Dame today, and then 11 versus 6, and all that kind of. I don't like this 30 days deal either. But anyway, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. What college football fan, if you read off 5 versus 12, 6, 11, 7, 10, 8, 9, would not be like, give me that.
Give me all.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Have that for the 2 weeks heading up to Christmas instead of. I mean, you can still do these other bowl games. I like the bowl games, and I watched the majority of them. I took my kids to see the new Spider-Man movie today, so I did miss the Kent State game. But
the famous Idaho Potato Bowl.
Yeah,
come on.
I know, but they wanted to go see that Spider-Man, so I had to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd much rather be watching, top 15 playoff games.
Totally.
For these 2 weeks,
and they get their own slot, instead of every single decent team playing within 3 days of New Year's,
Yeah. It's coming.
Yeah. It is. So, Lou, as far as, for Michigan, their defense, it's been all about, Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo. How do you think Georgia's going to approach as far as, in those passing downs, that protection? Do you think they're going to go 5-man? You think they're going to max protect? Like, how do you think they're going to approach handling those defensive ends? Because, I mean, that's been the Achilles heel of essentially any team who's played Michigan has been those two, guys who are just consistently applying pressure. How do you think Georgia's going to approach that?
Yeah, I think that's the best outside combination Georgia has played. Will Anderson is amazing. There's no doubt about it. But there's nobody on the other side nearly as good as the two Michigan guys. So like I mentioned earlier, Will Anderson had the 1 sack. Now with Michigan, you can't just say, okay, where's Will Anderson? Okay, let's block him, because there's one on each end. You have to account for both of them. You can't double team both of them. So Georgia's done a good job this year protecting Stetson. He's only been sacked 7 or 8 times all year, and he's mobile too. He moves around the pocket well, so that helps too. I think Georgia will do okay. But I'm not going to be surprised if Aiden Hutchinson has 3 tackles for loss and a sack. I mean, that's not going to surprise me. I mean, that dude's he's probably the most dominant player I've seen on the front like that since Chase Young at Ohio State. I mean, that guy was unbelievable. And the thing about Chase Young, he did it when it mattered. It seemed like every time Ohio State needed a sack on 3rd down, he got one. It was unbelievable. And Aiden Hutchinson reminds me of that. I mean, he's fun to watch. He's fun to watch. You're not going to just take him out of the game. I mean, he's going to have an impact on the game. Well,
that was what I was just going to say too. Is even if he doesn't get sacks, he has an impact on essentially every play that he's in. Which is what makes him that much more valuable. He's not just that one type of a player. So, Michigan has been able to stop the run against. I mean, they stopped the run against Ohio State. Ohio State couldn't run at all against them. Iowa couldn't run at all against them. So that's where I'm going to be interested to see if Georgia lines up in that first quarter and just says, "Hey, we're going to run it down your throat." Michigan, I think, is going to give them a run for their money.
And apparently, if you ask Desmond Howard, Georgia should probably recruit Kenny Pickett to put between Aiden Hutchinson and Stetson Bennett.
Oh boy! Des did not make any friends. He made a lot of
with
new
me. He
Michigan
didn't.
No Ohio State friends. I know he doesn't have many Ohio.
It had nothing to do with me being an Ohio State guy. Wink, wink. But it really didn't.
It was definitely a media guy crossing the line over to his alma mater / fandom a little too much on a Heisman ESPN show.
Tebow did start it.
Tebow did start.
He did get it started.
Let's blame him.
Yeah.